President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu sat together in the White House yesterday and came up with a plan to bring peace to Gaza. What does that mean? What are the 20 points that they have discussed and laid out? And what is the impact? Is it even feasible to introduce this plan? I've invited Alex Krainer onto the program. He's a geopolitical analyst, but also former hedge fund manager, and he's going to help us put some perspective around what is happening. We've also got some other topics lined up. If we get to them, Russia attacking NATO, but also what is happening between the US and China. Are there some side deals over Taiwan happening? Really curious what his thoughts are on those topics as well. We have 30 minutes to discuss all of that, and we'll do our very best to fit it all in. Before I switch over to my guest, hit that like and subscribe button, though. It's a free way to support our channel. We much appreciate it. So thanks so much for doing that. Now, Alex, it's great to welcome you back on Soar Financially. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kai. Always a pleasure to join you, and warm greetings to your audience.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. Before we get started, real quick info as well to our audience members. You will be joining us in Frankfurt at DEUTSCHE GOLDMESSE, November 14th and 15th. Really excited to get your geopolitical insights on everything. So, and to meet in person. We haven't met in person yet, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I really look forward to it. Yes.
It'll be great. Alex, as I mentioned, 30 minutes. We got to run through it. I feel like I should put a timer at the top left corner to get us going. But President Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu met in the White House yesterday and presented a peace plan for Gaza. I've got the 20 points here. I'll show them real quick. What do you make of the talks? What do you make of the outcome?
I have to say, it seems to me that this is little more than a way to buy time. It reminds me of the roadmap to peace from about 20 years ago that, George W. Bush was negotiating, which obviously led nowhere. It was just another exercise in time wasting. With this one, I feel it's a very, very long shot. And I think that Trump is probably forcing down everybody's throat to buy time. And the reason why he needs to buy time is because he doesn't want to go to war against Iran. And he is heavily pressured at home politically to take on Iran for Israel. And, we have to part with the illusion that Trump as the president of the United States can just snap his fingers and do whatever he wants. There's a Congress there. And as we know, the U.S. Congress is Israeli occupied territory. Benjamin Netanyahu can get more support out of U.S. Congress than Donald Trump can. I think Netanyahu controls about between 70 and 80 out of 100 votes in U.S. Senate. Trump barely has over 50, and those senators are not all loyal to Trump. So and then, we must not remember the 70-some million Christian evangelicals plus Zionist Jews who are a tremendous political force in the United States. So that is where the pressure to take on Iran is coming from. And it seems to me that this new, roadmap to peace is nothing but a way to buy time and avoid war. Obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu is not very excited about it. And implementation of this plan risks splitting up his coalition, which could be the end of his government. This will be very contentious in Israel. Second, it's assuming that they can disarm Hamas, or that Hamas will agree to be disarmed, which will never happen, because by that act, Hamas would have to put themselves at the mercy of their enemy and of all the forces in the region that have betrayed them time and again. And then you have to force this on all other actors in the region, namely Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Trump has even been talking about having Iran join the Abraham Accords, because that would be necessary for this to hold together. And I think that it's such a long shot that I'm not even sure why bother. And so the only way that I can explain this to myself is that Trump is simply buying time to avoid going to war against Iran as they wait out Israel, because Israel really is on very thin ice. Not only are they losing their 8 wars, growing weaker and weaker by the day, but they're also rapidly losing support in the United States. So it's, it could be game over for Israel. And it's going to be either that, or there's going to be a general war in the Middle East against Iran. Unfortunately for Trump, for the Israelis, for the British, who are ultimately behind all this, they can go to a war like this, but they cannot predict its outcome. They really cannot predict its outcomes. So it's a high level of desperation at this point, and I think that for that reason, Trump doesn't want to have anything to do with it. So that's why he pretty much arm twisted Netanyahu into supporting this 20-point peace plan. But I think that Netanyahu is going to get blasted at home, and Israel probably won't even begin to implement it.
Yeah, I've been scanning the news already, and the far right in Israel is already pushing back aggressively, calling it a failure of diplomacy.
Obviously.
Right, so exactly what you've mentioned. It seems like the government might be falling apart over this. But interesting follow-up, maybe you mentioned Trump strong-armed Netanyahu into potentially accepting this peace plan. Yet you earlier in the conversation you mentioned that Netanyahu is probably in a stronger position than Trump, just based on political access, perhaps, or political capability, maybe, I don't know. But what does Trump have over Netanyahu to push him into agreeing to this? Drug discovery is broken. 90% of drugs fail. It's slow, it's expensive, and the so-called AI solutions out there, they don't work because biology is way too complex for basic pattern recognition. That's why Hive caught my attention. They've built something totally different. Hive technology. Think of it like Google for biology. Instead of raw sequences and black box outputs, Hive actually indexes biology in a way that makes sense. Traceable, explainable, and usable. On top of that, their Lens AI platform connects over 25 billion biological relationships using AI and knowledge graphs. That means they can design better drugs before you waste billions in the lab. Faster, cheaper, and with a much higher chance of success. And here's where it gets interesting. Hive is already using this tech to design next-gen GLP-1 therapies. Yeah, the class of drugs behind the Ozempic craze. Only they're aiming for smarter dosing, better safety, and even non-invasive delivery, like patches. That's a game changer for diabetes care. This isn't just hype. Hive has patents, partnerships with major pharma, and a first-mover advantage in a market projected to be worth over $100 billion. Bottom line, AI isn't just helping drug discovery, it's about to take it over. And Hive is one of the few companies actually delivering on that promise. Keep your eye on this one. Check out their link in the bio below.
Well, I think I need to clarify. I don't think that Netanyahu is in a stronger position politically. Netanyahu has greater influence over the American lawmakers.
Yeah.
Because, remember how most American congressmen have at least one or more AIPAC handlers who practically call them on a daily basis and tell them how to vote and what policies to support. How many U.S. congressmen have Israeli flags in front of their offices with bumper stickers, we support Israel and things like this. And then when Netanyahu turns up at the U.S. Senate, joint sessions of U.S. Congress, he could be reading falafel recipes and he would get 50 standing ovations. Trump doesn't get that treatment. But Trump is not at war on 8 fronts. Trump is at war on mainly one front, and that is the occult oligarchy that's still running the Western world for the time being. And so obviously this power structure needs a regime change in Iran, then they need a regime change in Russia, then they need a regime change in Pakistan and in China. And they need all these dominoes to fall. So they need Israel to help or to bring about the regime change in Iran. The Israelis themselves have been saying, well, as soon as we're done with Iran, we're going on to Pakistan. At the same time, and you can tell now that it's all the same forces, they're still trying to regime change Russia. And if they manage to regime change Russia, then they would use Russia against China in exactly the same way as they used Ukraine against Russia. So this is how the dominoes are intended to fall, with the ultimate objective of taking control of Eurasian landmass completely, and to install client regimes everywhere, and for nations that are potentially a threat to the Western oligarchy, to balkanize them and to turn them into little colonies, little client states, as they already expressed their intention to do with Russia. It is very clear that Trump is not cooperating on this agenda. And to me, it seems that his agendas with Israel and with Gaza are only a delaying tactic. And even if you take into account the idea of doing something with Gaza as a massive real estate development project, if you think about it for 2 seconds, you realize that it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It is completely bonkers and insane, because who would go and invest billions into some kind of a development that it's on disputable legal grounds in a hostile environment? Because that would be a very long-term project, right? You wouldn't be doing that for a year or 5 years. This is something that would be for a generation or 2 or 10. And so you would have to make sure that the whole project is on legally sound foundations, because otherwise you can't sell it, right? So it would be a write-off. And then even if you finagle that every regime in the region is your own client regime, like Jordan, like Syria today, that all can change very quickly. So if you brought this in front of any investor, they would tell you must be mad. Besides, the world is very big. Why on earth, if I wanted to develop like a Mediterranean Riviera, why on earth would I do it in Gaza? I could do it in Egypt or in Spain or Lebanon, in Greece or something like that. Yeah, why Gaza? So the whole thing is just such a long shot that I think that clearly what they're really trying to accomplish is not even close to what they're telling us that they're doing.
My mind went immediately to the bin Laden family in Saudi Arabia, because they're big project and real estate developers, but probably the wrong angle to take this. But you would need a strong local partner, though, in that regard. And that's why I went to Saudi Arabia, bin Laden family, which, of course, the U.S. has interesting links with, of course, in the past. But I'm not sure if that's the right approach here, and that's the right angle. This is probably maybe even taking it a little too far here. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And so so long as the axis of resistance is there and alive and kicking, which it is, none of them makes any sense. Hamas is there, hasn't been defeated, will not disarm. I'm 100% certain of that. Hezbollah is still there. Israelis can thump their chest that they have destroyed Hezbollah. They have not. Ansar Allah is still there in Yemen with rockets that can reach Israel and Gaza. Gaza, if it were in the hands of Western real estate developers. Jordanian regime is on thin ice. It could, it's not long for this world. Syria, God only knows, but we know that large chunks of Syrian Arab army went to Iran and Iraq, and some may be hiding within Syria today as well. Whole tank divisions went over. They're there, they're intact, they're waiting. Iran hasn't been regime changed, and they will not buy into Abraham Accords. So what are you going to do? And then your military supremacy in the region is, long gone. You don't have it anymore. And so I think that let's say that the very positive outlook on this is that Trump is avoiding war against Iran. And I think that's an encouraging sign. And, many people will say like, oh yeah, but, he bombed Iran. Yeah, that was a war like World Wrestling Federation is martial arts. Because, they talk to each other. Trump told them at some point, look, I can't hold back anymore. I have to, do something. We're going to be bombing these places in 48 hours. You have 48 hours to evacuate whatever may be important to you. And so the Iranians did. And then you had a couple of missiles and a couple of bombs that were dropped on these sites, which caused some damage, but it didn't cause a whole lot of damage. Israelis caused a lot of damage by assassinating a whole bunch of people in the Iranian government and military. But I kind of predicted that. I said, before that happened, I said, either there will be no attack on Iran, or there's going to be a fake one, meaning they're going to do something that looks spectacular, but isn't going to achieve anything very substantial. And we're going to know for sure by the way the Iranians retaliate. And when the Iranians retaliated, they also pre-announced the move. They gave the Americans time to evacuate from their Qatari base. So there was zero casualties, and Trump even publicly thanked the Iranians for the courtesy. So that was just a World Wrestling Federation encounter for the entertainment of the media in the West. But it wasn't a real war, which to me was a sign that Trump is not on board with this global, knocking down domino after domino in order to establish full hegemony over the Eurasian landmass.
You're making Trump out to be a good guy in this scenario. Is that a right characterization here? Because he's going against the cabal here that seems to be behind this, that is pushing for that agenda. And he, back to his original term, like he's trying to drain the swamp. Is that something that he's doing right now by pushing, by delaying, and maybe playing that political kabuki theater here?
Well, this is very difficult to say, either he is or he's not. So that would be like a 50-50 proposition. But I paid very close attention to Trump, to members of his team, to their interview statements, to their policy moves. And I'm not exactly 50-50. I would say I'm more 60-40. Because there are many things that he has done that suggest to me that he is changing the course of American foreign policy. And it's a huge change, of course, because it's practically breaking with the continuity of the past 70-some years, like from World War II, basically. And perhaps the most important thing he has done is to reestablish constructive, cooperative relationship with Russia. Because, as Germany's former foreign minister, Sigmar Gabriel, said, this is far and away the most important and most sensitive relationship in the world for the future of the world and the future of humanity. And it's absolutely unforgivable that Biden administration completely closed the door on this relationship for 3 years, because it put us all much, much closer to the risk of nuclear annihilation. And I think that with Trump and their very regular contacts with the Russian counterparts, it's not just Trump calling Putin and meeting. I think they had at least 9 or 10 calls so far, but then their various delegations are meeting and holding conferences on a very regular basis. And some of that, as we found out from a recent Marco Rubio statement, some of those discussions are secret. And then last month, Tulsi Gabbard, director of national intelligence, banned sharing of intelligence on these discussions between Russia and the United States with the other 4 of the Five Eyes. So no sharing of that information with the British, Canadians, Australians, and New Zealanders, which is unprecedented. And then she also canceled security clearances of 37 officials. Trump disbanded an organization, a group at the State Department that was pretty much set up in order to explore strategies about how to antagonize and destabilize Russia. Trump disbanded them. And so all these, to my mind, that is all very positive. Is Trump a good guy? We'll find out in the end, because he controls his government to an extent. I think he controls it much more than he did in his first term. But I think that a lot depends on next year's midterm elections, because as I mentioned, he only has a very thin majority in the Senate, and a lot of those senators will stab him in the back first opportunity they have. No. So can a weak guy be a good guy? It's hard, but his building up his strength. I think that indictments against Comey and probably coming indictments against many other people are going to move him closer in that direction. I think that when was this meeting of all the generals and admirals of the U.S. military? I think that's an interesting sign, because many people assume that he's doing that because he's preparing to go to war somewhere, right? Ukraine or Iran or something.
Venezuela.
But I'm not sure that would be the case, because the United States has gone to war many, many times without doing anything of the sort. I think that meeting has to do with internal questions, with internal security, because Trump's main battleground at this moment, without a doubt, is the political battle at home, political battle for power. He has to shore up his power and ensure continuity, because if this is all just 4 years and then it all falls by the wayside, he will not be able to fulfill his intentions. So he has to make sure that, after his term, somebody like J.D. Vance is going to take over for another 8 years. And then the United States has a chance to extricate itself from all the insane imperial misadventures everywhere around the world, and to do what they announced that they would do at the beginning: embrace multipolar integrations and break with the post-World War II global order. Marco Rubio said this explicitly, that this is the policy of the government. So we'll see. Trump is easy to hate. He's I don't know why he takes this boorish, thuggish style in communications, in dealing with other countries, Venezuela, Iran, China, and so forth. But I try to focus not on style, but on substance. And when it comes to substance, I really am 60-40 in favor of Trump.
Maybe quick follow-up before we move on to the other two topics that I outlined earlier, but he spoke in front of the UN General Assembly last week. And if you take the rhetoric out of it and some of the style, as you call it, out of it, what was his message? Like, the UN was established after World War II, of course, as well. What do you make of that? Is the U.S. going to break from it? Half the political spectators sort of assumed that following his speech, that the U.S. might actually pull out of the UN.
I doubt that the United States will pull out of the UN. He was explicit that UN has great potential. And I know from Russian and Chinese policymakers that they still place great hope for humanity in the UN, but it needs to be radically reformed. Honestly, our alternative is chaos. Everybody going to war against everybody for whatever reason. So the United Nations is necessary, and I think that Trump was explicit in endorsing that. He said the organization has great potential, and I think that they may have discussed this with the Russians and the Chinese as well. But I think that Trump's speech, when you strip it of the intolerable style of his, it's kind of without decorum, unpolished, like a juvenile thug, basically. But the substance definitely confirms break with the globalism, because he attacked the uncontrolled migrations, and he accused the United Nations for being the instigator of this. And he also called the climate change a hoax. And so I think this is a very, very clear signal, because these are two of the main, in addition to pandemics and public health questions. I think these are just a handful of the main agenda items for the globalist rules-based global order. So I think that Trump's speech pretty much rejects that.
No,
No, go ahead.
No, it felt to me a little bit like the Munich speech by J.D. Vance, a bit of a wake-up call, trying to rattle the cage and just wake people up in general. Because one of the quotes he delivered was, "Well, all the UN does is write letters and never follow through," calling it a bit of a toothless tiger. Doesn't mean the UN should get an army or anything, but there's certain substance to that, what he said, in my opinion. So I think there's certain truth, and that's why it reminded me a little bit it reminded me of the Munich conference that happened earlier this year. Maybe that point. Alex, we have to move on real quick. We've got like 4 minutes left. Curious what your take is just on Russia provoking NATO. I'm sitting here in Germany. Every day I read a headline of some Russian jet cruising through European or NATO airspace without just not being allowed to, obviously. Like, what do you make of that? Is there any substance to it, or is it just newspaper headlines?
I think it's pure propaganda. It's exactly the same thing as the how do you call it, chemical attack by Bashar al-Assad in Syria back in 2015 or 16. Bashar al-Assad was on the verge of winning the war. He was really on the verge of winning. And then, for no reason whatsoever, he decides to conduct a chemical attack against his own people. Obviously, it was a hoax, because it was the last ditch effort to try to overthrow his regime and to unite the West, into intervening in Syria on the side of the jihadis. The same way we see that Ukraine is rapidly losing ground against Russian forces, that their defenses are collapsing. I know that the propaganda that Ukraine is winning, that Russia is losing, is off the charts. It's everywhere. It's so unconvincing, because it's being pumped up in the through a big hose into the social media, into the mainstream media, and so forth. That they're clearly trying to reverse the situation by finding a pretext for an Article 5 situation where they could bring the combined West together to take on Russia and to escalate the war to a World War III proportions.
Now, we don't want that to happen, but as you said, it clearly feels like propaganda. I had Colonel Douglas McGregor on last week, and he mentioned that the drones flying into Poland weren't even Russian drones. It was something else. So lots of propaganda.
You could see in pictures, these were styrofoam drones. And some of, so they're very, very light. They are Russians of make, I think. But they are decoys that the Russians send along with the real armed drones in order to draw air defense fire. And so because they're so light, when they run out of fuel, they just land somewhere, they fall. And enough of them, I guess, remained intact that the Ukrainians could pick them up, fix them up, and then prepare them for this. But why would Russia attack Polish airspace with dummy drones that don't have any warhead on them, and that don't have any electronic surveillance equipment? Or what would be the point? There would be no point other than, the one side in this war whipping themselves into a frenzy to say the Russians are coming, we have to all come together and go to war. And that's exactly what they're doing. And so it's just like one thing after another. What I'm worried about, because these are not only these are such amateurish, unconvincing false flags that I kind of worry that maybe they're being used to, to get us used to the idea that maybe the Russians are doing something, who knows? And then they run polls to ask people, what do you think? Is this? And then you see that a good segment of the population thinks like, yeah, this is the Russians that are doing this for some reason. Because then you're preparing the terrain for a real false flag attack, which could be a nuke going off over some European city. It could be a dirty bomb somewhere. The Western intelligence has been present in Ukraine long enough under Russian fire to collect a lot of fragments of Russian missiles. I would remind your viewers that nearly all the webcams in the city of London, not just the city of London, the whole metropolitan area of London, have gone dark about a year ago in September 2024. They just all went dark all at the same time. And they're still dark to this day. There's no explanation for this. It couldn't be a random event. If they broke down, if they went online, if somebody switched, it would be a few off, a few on. They're all dark, as if they don't want the world to watch something going on there, and they don't want there to be footage of something that they might be planning.
Scary thought, Alex. And maybe one very last question. Is there, I was thinking of the movie Clear and Present Danger with Ben Affleck and I forgot the other actors, but there was a back channel where they always verified facts with somebody on the other side. Where do we go and check?
I think we just have to pay close attention. I think we always have to keep the broadest possible context to this conflict in mind, because that's the only way to decode what's nonsense and what's real. And that context is that it's a war between two systems of governance. It's the war between the Western colonialist, imperialistic system of governance that is controlled by money-lending oligarchies. City of London with its satellites on Wall Street, Frankfurt, Stockholm, Paris, Tokyo, and so forth. The other side is everybody else. It's Russia, China, Iran, but it's also the populations of Western countries too, because, they're shoving CBDCs down our throats, digital IDs, this nonsensical LGBT propaganda, all kinds of divisions, uncontrolled migrations. Our countries are overrun by military-aged male migrants everywhere. The climate change thing, the pandemics, it's it feels like we're fighting 1,000 battles, but it's not disconnected. It is all connected. And when you start connecting the dots, you see that in many of these battles, the same people appear on the other side. People like Tony Blair, people like Jonathan Powell, tech moguls like Larry Ellison. I forget all the names, but it's always the same people, and somehow they're all very closely connected to the banking oligarchy. Tony Blair is Mr. City of London. Emmanuel Macron is the former Rothschild banker. Friedrich Merz is a former, how do you call him, BlackRock guy from. Now he's in the shadows, but there was always Mario Draghi in the mix, who is the former. Then you have Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada. So it always kind of converges on the same relatively small group of people who have very disproportionate power, and they're into climate change, they're into pandemics, public health, migrations, all this militant liberalism, and they're into wars against Iran, against Russia, against China. So it's the context that can help us discern what's real and what's propaganda.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Alex, what a wonderful conversation. We'll have to cut it a little bit short. I can't wait to continue this in Frankfurt, though, in about 6 weeks' time, November 14th and 15th. Can't wait to host you in Frankfurt and just continue this conversation. It's so fascinating. There's so many facets to it. I love discussing geopolitics because it feels like watching a spy movie play out in front of your own eyes. It's kind of scary. It's also fascinating, but it's mostly scary, to be honest. Where can we send our audience in the meantime to follow more of your work, Alex?
Oh, I have. You have kindly put my Substack on under my name, which I expect will be visible to viewers.
Yeah.
I also have another. So this is a daily market newsletter, which provides trend following signals and covering some 18 or 19 global markets. I also have a personal Substack called Alex Krainer Substack, where I publish a bit less frequently, but maybe more thoroughly researched and better refined articles. And I'm also active on X. My handle is @NakedHedgie.
Fantastic. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Very, very insightful. I hope this helps a lot of people out there understand what is going on and decipher some of the headlines that we're seeing on a daily basis. So really appreciate that, Alex, and everybody else. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Alex Krainer. If you did, why don't you join us in Frankfurt? It's free for investors. We'll also be joined by 35 mining companies that are looking to pitch their equity stories. Some of them have really interesting production stories, exploration stories, or actually all of them do. Why don't you join us? GermanGoldShow.com, free registration. Can't wait to see you there. And if you have any comments for us, put them down below as well. We do want to hear from you. Hit that like and subscribe button. It means a lot to us, and it is free. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with lots more. Take care out there.